G'day everyone, Mike here, and welcome to another edition of the Beyond Billables podcast. Wherever you're listening in the world, thank you for listening. Thank you for following and subscribing. The support is hugely appreciated in our 5th year of this podcast. And on the show today, I had a really great chat with Gemma Bunner and Kerry Shaw of Shaw Bunner Legal in Australia. Now, Gemma and Kerry are personal injuries lawyers, and they started a practice in regional New South Wales a few years ago that's grown rapidly. And they tell their story. It's a really, really interesting story about starting out, how to organically grow a business, and the challenges and successes of that process. So without further ado, on with the show. Kerry and Gemma, welcome to the Beyond Billables podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
So let's talk about starting your own law firm, because your partners in Shaw Bunner Legal, a law firm in New South Wales that focuses on personal injury law. But I'd love to speak about the process of starting the firm and what brought you two together. Where did the impetus come from, and why did Shaw Bunner come about?
So the idea to start our own firm came about after Gemma and I returned to work from maternity leave. We worked together in a large national firm for a number of years, and when we returned to work, we had some discussions about how we may like to approach things differently moving forward, in terms of both the practice and law, and also regarding our families and raising our children. And that's where the discussion started in terms of potentially opening our own firm.
How has that actually played out in real life? Because starting a firm is really tough. How do you manage that balance, and how have you been able to make that happen?
Yeah, look, I think we've learnt many new skills, that's for certain. Coming out of a large firm where there were departments that handled every element of a practice, and then coming out, it was just Kerry and I to begin with, and we wore many different hats. So marketing, accounting, learning some different practice areas to get us started. I think the key thing that we've benefited from is the flexibility that comes with running your own practice, that we have had to work different hours with a family, but it's also afforded us the flexibility to have time off when we've needed to for different things relating to our children. So our children were quite young when we did start the practice, so it's been beneficial in that sense. It certainly has had some challenges, as any juggling parent would know, but it certainly afforded us a great deal of flexibility.
How have you managed the work split between yourselves? Because a lot of people start firms on their own and then bring partners in, but how have you gone about deciding who does what? Because there's so many other what's than just the work.
Yeah.
I think that the great thing is that Gemma and I had worked together for so long that the first thing is that we knew that we both had a very similar work ethic, and coming into the firm together, there was no concerns about one person not pulling their weight or anything like that. It has been, I would say, a really natural development in terms of not only the practice of law, because we both know that we specialise in personal injury, but as you say, the other elements of the business, we both have different strengths, and that has been a really natural development. So, for example, Gemma is great on social media and she looks after that, whereas I'm very hesitant about what to post. Whereas I look after more of the numbers, the billing side of it, the trust accounting, that what Gemma would say probably is the boring side of it. And she looks after some of the creative sides, which is the social media, but that has been quite a natural movement in towards those roles for us.
Yeah, I think we've both been able to identify our strengths and our weaknesses. Numbers is certainly not one of my strengths. So we've just naturally progressed into those different roles, but we can bounce things off each other and different ideas. And I often am a big picture person, but Kerry's more grounded and reins me right back in, those sorts of things, which has worked really well for us.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, ultimately, the other person, is adding the fuel that you don't have. So starting out, you come out of a leading firm and then launch your practice together. What was the first 6 months like? How did you go about getting clients on, and what did that look like?
Well, we started with 0 clients. We weren't able to bring over any of our clients from our former firm, and we didn't even try and do anything like that. So we opened with no clients, and in the first 6 months, we were very pleasantly surprised about how the business grew. We're lucky that, having worked in personal injury, we had developed a reputation, which meant that people like former clients and things like that tracked us down, referred friends and things like that. So that was the personal injury side of it. We also started practicing in conveyancing and wills and estates, because that's the kind of work that has that short turnaround time. And we were very lucky to be embraced by our local community. And so when we first started, we thought we would have all this time to set up all of these practices and take things very slowly. And we were fortunate enough that we had so much work that we kind of developed that as we went.
We were also lucky to come into an area where there wasn't an existing legal practice. So we're in regional, the Hunter Valley region, which is about an hour inland from Newcastle, in a small township called Branxton. There was no existing legal practice here. So that was something that, when we offered those general services such as wills and estates and conveyancing, the local community really embraced that and was so supportive and welcoming of us as a new business and as a new legal practice. So we were really overwhelmed by just how welcoming the local community was. So that was a good start off for us as well.
So practicing law in a local regional place in Australia, I mean, how much of a different experience do you think it is to being in a larger city? Because obviously you have that local support, but you've got a much smaller market, and you've got I guess a different type of expectation locally. Yeah. What are the challenges and the benefits?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people expect that you do all things. That is one thing we've come across, that they'll expect you practice in all areas and can be their go-to lawyer for all practices of all different practice areas. So that's certainly been a little bit of a challenge. In terms of location away from the major courts, that can be difficult at times as well. Like if we have something that had been listed in at Newcastle or Sydney. However, the COVID pandemic has allowed for much more flexibility in that sense, with ABL court links and being able to appear via teleconference and those sorts of things. But yeah, it certainly poses some interesting challenges. I do recall when we'd first opened and we were in an old bank building in downtown Branxton, and the window was up at the time trying to circulate some air into the office, and a cattle truck pulled up outside, and I was on the phone to a client, and the cows were making a lot of noise in the back of the cattle truck. And I think it hit me then that we were no longer in the big smoke of Newcastle, and that we were practicing from somewhere completely different. So we've had some fun times too.
I think too, some of the same elements can be both benefits and challenges. So we learned very early that people don't necessarily like to make appointments in Branxton. They often just drop in. Oh, I was just hoping I could speak to you about this. I just wanted to give you an update about that, which is great because it means that we were able to really get to know our clients in a way that we had wanted to when we decided to make the move to open our own firm. At the same time, it is challenging when you're trying to manage a file load and things like that. So yeah, I think that there's certain elements that come in both brackets, but it's all been great in terms of learning and development and things like that.
It sounds like the growth was very much organic, especially in the first year you're placed in a community. But let's discuss the practice a little bit more, because ultimately, you had success and then focused your message around personal injuries. What was the process with that, and how did that align with both of your connections with the community and experience?
I think when we opened, strategically, we offered those general areas of practice purely for the quicker turnaround in terms of fees. So one thing with personal injury work is it's long tail. It can take 18 months to 2 years before you might see fees on a matter that you've worked on. So we identified quite early on that those other practice areas would give us a little bit more flexible cash flow or steady cash flow. But as we've moved along and grown that personal injury practice, and that's really where I think for Kerry and I, that's our passion point. That's the work that we really enjoy, and that's our background, and our expertise are in that area. So we've been fortunate to grow that practice now to a point where that's now providing us both with full-time file loads. So as a result of that, we've stepped away from the wills and estates and estate administration work. We're no longer doing any new work of that nature. We do have a licensed conveyancer on our team, so she's sort of managing that side of the practice at the moment, which is allowing Kerry and I to really focus in on that personal injury work.
So in terms of the personal injury work, as Gemma said, that is our passion. It's what we have worked in essentially since we were baby lawyers. That's where we started when we finished in university, and that's something that I think that we're both very fortunate and also proud that we've been able to really go back to that niche within approximately 3 years of starting the business. We've got a range of great clients in the Hunter and beyond, and it's really great to be able to help people in a variety of different areas who are going through unfortunately difficult times in their life, that have been injured at work and things like that.
Your practice has a particular, strength in helping people in the mining industry. Gemma, how did that come about? Is it because of the reality of the Hunter Valley and the size of the industry, mining, wines, all the key things that we all know about the Hunter? What was the impetus behind that, or is it just because of what your experience has been?
Yeah, look, I guess it's interesting to note that so Kerry and I both grew up in coal mining communities. I grew up in an area called Lithgow. Kerry grew up in Muswellbrook, strong coal mining communities. Our fathers were coal miners, generations of coal miners before that. We now have husbands and partners in the industry and so forth. So we're connected to the industry that way. But from a professional point of view, our previous firm exposed us to that practice area. We did quite a lot for one of the major unions in the mining industry. So that exposed us to that work. Moreover, in New South Wales, it's quite niche, the coal mining compensation space. So there are particular laws and set legislation that applies to workers injured in or about a coal mine in New South Wales, which is quite distinct to other areas. So I think we've generally enjoyed that work because we have an affiliation to the industry generally. The clientele are often just salt of the earth, wonderful people. And of course, being based in the Hunter, as you say, it's a mining area. There are mines everywhere here, but we also have clients throughout New South Wales in some of those key mining areas. So it's an area that we really enjoy practicing in.
I think that our connection to coal mining means that in terms of helping those clients, we can understand a lot about the nature of the work and also certain things to do with growing up in coal mining families. So there's lots of terms and things that are unique to the mining industry that often people who may not know our background say, oh, but do you know what that means? And it's like, yeah, I grew up at the dinner table hearing about that in an underground coal mine. So I think that that's a really great way that we can build rapport with clients and understand things on a different level of just being their solicitor, having grown up in coal mining families.
Yeah. So I guess that community connection is one thing, but how do you manage from a professional development perspective, get your own continued development, and how do you connect with other lawyers? Because it's for people in regional places which don't have lots of events and other things in place, how have you managed that, both personally and professionally?
I think certainly there are a lot of groups out there now that we are part of that are largely or predominantly on an online space. So groups such as the Club, which is organised by Clarissa Raywood, the Happy Family Lawyer. There are Facebook groups for both lawyering mums, but also new law chambers, those sorts of groups that we've found exceptionally helpful. We've also been fortunate to connect with other firms that don't practice in the personal injury space that are based up here in the Hunter, both locally but even further up in the Hunter Valley, and down on the coast in Newcastle, more in that boutique law firm space. And we've found that developing those relationships and at times reaching out to them for different ideas or to bounce things from them, or referring work to them and for them to refer work to us has been a really nice thing as well. So and we're fortunate to have some connections from our former life as well, and that firm that personal injury specialists that we're still in touch with and connect with, which has been good.
I think that the way that we've met other lawyers who have their own firms and things like that has happened really organically too. We've met so many people who probably have firms a similar age to ours or within 5 years of starting up, who are going through different challenges along the way in terms of the business and practice areas and things like that. So we've been really fortunate to come across those people either in the local area, having matters with them, or through Instagram, and connect and continue to build that relationship, which has been really good.
Yeah, obviously we originally connected on Instagram, and I thought I'd ask Gemma about your efforts online and what you've got out of it, both for a business and personally, because clearly there's that personal connection as well.
Yeah, look, I think the social media side has been fun. It's a way to I guess be a little bit more creative, and we've had quite a lot of fun with it over the years. I think particularly our organic growth has largely come down to our social media platforms. I say that, firstly in terms of connections with other firms and other lawyers, that's been marvelous, and we've met a number of other practitioners through Instagram, but also Facebook for our local growth and local brand awareness. That's been wonderful. So we've been quite heavily involved with, supporting the local cricket club, the local netball club, sponsoring the junior rugby league, those sorts of things. So if you're posting some photographs of the local junior rugby team with our branding on their Guernseys and those sorts of things, has been really, really nice. So we've had quite a bit of fun with it. By no means am I an expert on social media, that's for sure. But we've found it, particularly in the startup space, it's something you can do at pretty minimal cost. So if you're turning up on there and you're present and you're commenting and you're engaging with people, it tends to carry itself a long way. So we've found that as a great source to grow the business in the early stages.
We're connecting to the community as well, and that's a great thing that you've done incredibly well. Instead of being super salesy all the time, like, people are way more interested in the fact that you are connected and seeing that the pictures at the local football club or, some local events, whatever that connection is, way more than hearing about, section X, Y, and Z or changes to
Yeah.
the regs, because you're people and that, you're local people. And there's something to be said about locals supporting locals as well. And that just doesn't have to be regional. That's the same in a lot of places. And I think a lot of people forget that too.
I think that social media has been a great way to learn more, not just about Shore BUNNER Legal, but about the people behind it, about our team. And it's a way to develop a connection, as you say, with the community, and a way that's probably quite unique to social media that in years gone by hasn't been there in that way, that can build a level of trust for people coming in and hopefully kind of ease that process that can sometimes be quite overwhelming for people going to see a lawyer. So that's what we've found.
Yeah, I think Kerry raises that really great point about that know, like, and trust. And because our clients are looking for a lawyer at a time where they're in a really vulnerable state, if they've sustained an injury or going through something quite traumatic, that, what we want people to know is that we are normal people too. We're not these strange lawyers in ivory towers and all of that sort of approach, that we are down to earth, and we've got the skill set, but also that level of empathy and, that, I guess, that down to earth approach to try and help them through a claim.
Speaking of that empathy, obviously you work in a difficult area of law and you see a lot of difficult things. How do you manage that personally, and how have you managed that? Because you can get too connected sometimes. How have you both managed the balance between, how you serve people, how connected you get to things, and still being the empathetic people that you are?
I think that myself, and also not to speak for Gemma, but I would say that having done this kind of work since we left university means that we were probably exposed to quite a lot at an early stage of our career. And as we did that, we built the foundations to be able to deal with that and be empathetic as we came through our working in our careers in personal injury. I would say that we do, to an extent, take for granted the type of work that we do and the impact it can have on us, to an extent, in that we have worked in it for so long that sometimes, for example, we've brought in a legal assistant this year, and some of the things that she says, and it's interesting to see it from an outside perspective, someone who's only just coming into this area of law, and it can be quite overwhelming at times. But I do think that we have put the foundations in place early that we can be there for our clients in an empathetic manner, but also we have the ability to leave work at work. And I think that that's as much as you can with running your own business. But I think that is really important when you work in an area where people are going through such a difficult time in their lives, that it could be overwhelming to take on a lot of that very emotional time that clients have. But I think that we both have developed a way to move forward in a way that's empathetic, but not, I would say that we can, to an extent, leave it at work. Do you agree, Gemma?
Yeah, definitely. I second all of that. I think we've just, I think coming into PI straight out of law school, that we've had to develop those coping skills. And I think that's just come with time, to be honest. That's really just developed over time. But I also think that I feel exceptionally fortunate to have come out with Kerry in this business. I feel as though had I been doing this myself, would be a very different scenario in this area. Like, we're both very good at checking in on each other and forcing each other, or we can debrief, or I can be like, Kerry, you need some time, or like, are you okay? Or, you need to take a holiday. We sort of force each other to have a life outside of work, which, look, I think we do both do that well. And I think again, I guess coming back to your earlier question about starting the business, and one of the driving forces was so we could create a business around a life and have that time with our kids and have interests outside of the law and outside of running our practice. And I do think that we're both pretty switched on to making sure that we've got that balance, as best you can, but being mindful that we've got interests outside of work and doing those things that really fulfill us outside of work as well.
So what about the challenges, Kerry? What have you found the biggest challenge in the last couple of years starting your own firm and growing it?
I think that what the biggest, I think that probably learning to really focus on family and be present. I think that we both still work, I would say, part-time, but we're not in the office 5 days a week, let's put it that way. But I think that it's trying to disconnect from things like emails and calls and things when I'm not in the office. I have, since we've opened the firm, had another child, and so went through maternity leave with a business that was 18 months old. Thanks for that, Gemma. And so I think that taught me a lot about trying to balance a very young family and a business and a file load. And I still am now learning to take that step back when I'm not physically in the office. I think that's been my biggest challenge.
Gemma?
Mine, okay. Look, I think it's just backing yourself, really. I think you still have moments where we're making decisions, and quite significant decisions, and I'll often stop and think, geez, like, what are we making the right decision? Are we moving forward in the right way? I've never run a business before. Like, are we doing the right thing? Which I think you just have to rely on your intuition and move through those things. And yeah, we're going to probably make some mistakes, and we probably have at times along the way. But yeah, I think it's just continuing on the journey and thinking about where we want to be and how to move the practice forward in a way that, is quite strategic growth as well, not growing too big too soon, balancing all of that with what we're trying to achieve outside of the firm and our families and our commitment to, obviously raising young kids and all of those things at the time. So I think that's probably my biggest challenge, is making those right decisions, or feeling as though I'm, getting, I guess, that overwhelm of any business owner that, are we doing the right thing? And that's a constant.
And I think that that's probably something that we've come to learn is constant. And I don't think that no matter how many years you've been in business that you're necessarily going to feel comfortable or with all of your decision making. And if you are, then perhaps you're not challenging yourself enough. So I think that that's going to be ongoing, but I think that it's both challenging and exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge, but a fun one.
And again, having each other to make those decisions together, that's been one of the greatest things about coming out in business, is that we've been able to do it together.
So
absolutely.
Thinking about that, what does the future hold for the firm, and what excites you about the direction that you're taking things?
Look, I think definitely the direction of now niching into personal injury. So I think we get excited about the idea of what marketing could do for our business as well. So up to this point, we've been really fortunate to just grow the business organically. We haven't dedicated a lot of funds to paid marketing, and fortunately, we've been able to grow to this point. So I think we get excited about the idea of, okay, well, if we've organically got the practice to this point at this stage without any sort of strategic marketing, I wonder what we can do and how far we can go and what we can grow when we actually put some marketing behind it, and moreover, to have a real focus, like niche marketing into that PI space. So I think that's what's exciting us at the moment.
Yeah, the projects that we've done this year have really put the foundations in place to move forward with that personal injury niche. The company Beyond Billables, you may have heard of them. When you assisted with our rebrand, that was a really exciting project for us, and it was really great in terms of taking that step of moving forward to the niching in the personal injury, and we loved that process. And the end result, we're so happy with our new branding, and as Gemma said, now moving forward with that marketing aspect of it.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget in business, it's not just the dollars, but it's the process, and it's learning through it, and having that experience and enjoying those experiences for what they are, like getting the chance to make a brand that looks great and looks for you and is representative of you, and having fun with that kind of process. And I think it's really important, to find that whatever projects you do in business, that constant learning, that constant, this is fun, this is challenging, and this is why I'm doing it.
And I think that the things that you learn along the way in those projects that don't necessarily you think will come up at the start. I remember when the three of us had a very early Zoom meeting in respect of just talking about what is Shaw and Bunner legal, and Gemma and I just left that meeting feeling so re-energized in terms of our passion and our focus on personal injury. And that's not something necessarily that I would think when we contacted you to discuss some rebranding in a website, that we would be having such great discussions about our passions and things like that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's getting a little bit of help to see that potential future, because when you're in something, it's very difficult, especially when you're a working parent, to look, much further than about, 12 months down the track sometimes. But having and we don't sit there at home thinking 5 years in advance. Like, very few people do. Maybe some people do, but it's very difficult. And having those opportunities is actually, it's super fun, and I love it because I can see the magic that's there. And then it's really great fun to pull that out and discuss that, because on an individual level, no one's sitting there and going, I'm really good at this, and this is where I see where things just doesn't work like that. So obviously growth in the firm and focusing down. I guess, do you have any short-term plans that people listening, who would you like to connect with, and what's your plans, especially around social media, to keep growing the firm?
Look, I think our strategy moving forward is to continue to connect with other practitioners, primarily in the regional areas of New South Wales, who may be practicing in different areas and not personal injury, both as a way to, I guess, build those relationships and collaborate with potential different things or issues that come up in regional practice and in the boutique law firm space, but also perhaps as a way that if they're getting personal injury inquiries coming into their office, that they've got someone in mind that they've got confidence in to refer that work to. So I think that, that's something that we want to work on moving forward.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. This is actually my first podcast with multiple guests on it, and we're not in the same place. Which is actually pretty cool after 100 and something plus shows. I need to do more. I've been scared of having multiple people. But look, thank you both so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last 6 months and have the chance to work with you. And we're certainly very excited with what's happening. And I think for people within regional places, connecting together and putting your hand up and realizing there's lots of very cool people like yourselves out there to connect with and enjoy the journey with, is something to be mindful. So thank you both for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's our pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to the Beyond Billables podcast. If you didn't know, we're actually a brand and marketing agency that helps law firms, legal tech startups, and legal services businesses around the world. Our focus is helping our clients build valuable long-term brands, and we do that through brand strategy, through branding and design, website builds, social media, and content projects. No matter where you are in the world, we've worked with firms for over 15 years in multiple jurisdictions, and we're always happy to chat. If you want to chat about a project, drop me an email at michael@beyondbillables.com or connect on social media. Thanks so much for listening to the show.